Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm virtual welcome to you all from the sunny southeast. I hope everyone is keeping safe and well. I suppose in these very strange times. And also a very warm welcome to our speaker today, Eoin Gill. So my name is Colm Callery. I'm chair of the Southeast Region Committee. And on behalf of the Southeast Region, I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, Promoting Engineering and Why Engineers Should Promote STEM. So before we kick off and I hand you over to Eoin, just a little background on our webinar series. So we as a committee had a request by our incoming President of Engineers Ireland, Maurice Buckley, last summer for sectoral projects in support of national recovery. So the Southeast Region Committee response to this is our webinar series, which we started in September, and we'll be running right the way up to May of this year. So our webinar series is a free CPD series. It's open to all, and it aims to promote the positive impact engineers in our region have on our everyday lives across a range of engineering disciplines and areas of expertise. So today's webinar is the 8th in the series. So to date, we've had a diverse range of webinars, and I think it has been a fantastic success so far, and we have a bit to go. So as I say, with presentations up to May. So to date, we've had presentations on the North Keys, the Nearform and the COVID app, Danone and their carbon neutral journey, the biometric technologies with Eoin, Brother Batamian, the Waterford Scholar, that's just to name a few of them. So a brilliant and varied series so far across multiple engineering disciplines. So also we've had nearly 500 attendees for our series, and that's an incredible response, and I suppose it's a sign of the changing times as us engineers adapt and embrace the new norm of online learning and communication. So back to today's presentation then. So it's possibly the most important of our webinars to date. So as I said already, titled Promoting Engineering, Why Engineers Should Promote STEM. So our speaker today is Eoin Gill, who is my colleague on committee and indeed a long-standing committee member and past chair of the region. So Eoin will argue that all engineers should support the promotion of awareness of engineering for the twin benefits of attracting new talent to the profession and creating greater public support for engineering and engineers. So the format for today is that Eoin will present for maybe 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll have roughly 10 minutes of questions and answers. So questions can be asked in the comment box, and as time permits, Eoin will get through all these. So any questions that he doesn't get to answer, he will respond again. So with regards to Eoin and his current role, Eoin has been involved in engineering engagement with Engineers Ireland for over 25 years. Eoin is a chartered engineer and he's a lecturer in Waterford Institute of Technology. He established CalMast, which is WIT's STEM Engagement Centre, in 2002. He established Ireland's first Engineers Week in 2006 and Maths Week Ireland also in 2006. Maths Week Ireland became the biggest Maths Week in the world with over 325,000 participating in 2020. So in the Southeast region, CalMast works in partnership with other groups, engages over 30,000 students annually across all areas of science, technology, engineering and maths. So Engineers Week at WIT has attracted 2,500 students a year over 50 years to over 1,500 sessions. So an amazing career and an amazing list of achievements. So once more, on behalf of the Southeast Region members, a very warm welcome to you, Eoin. And without further ado, I'll hand you over. Thank you.
Thank you, Colm. And can I just say congratulations to you and the committee on the excellent programme. And it's wonderful, firstly, that you are responding to the need out there with COVID, and secondly, that you're attracting such big audiences. So it's really good. My intention originally when asked to do this talk was to focus on Engineers Week, which is coming up just at the end of the month. However, at that time, we did think that schools would be in session and that restrictions will be gradually lifting and there will be a lot more for us to do. So we are going to be quite restricted. So, but I will get onto it towards the end and discuss what we can do this year. But what I'm trying to do is talk about more the broader issues involved, and I call for a much more comprehensive approach in the future to the promotion of engineering. And what I ask is, why should engineers promote STEM? So if I can get my slides to change, we'll get underway. There we are. It's happening. So, as Colm said, I'm with CalMAS, the STEM Engagement Centre at Waterford Institute of Technology. So, as you might gather from that title, I'm involved in STEM engagement. So, we do need to ask about the relationship between what is STEM itself and why take this approach. So, before we answer that, I'm going to introduce you to my own experiences in the area and just a little timeline. When I was preparing for this, I got a little reflective when I discovered that it's 30 years since I gave my first engineering career talk. And that was in Clyde Road. And I was doing a postgrad in agricultural and food engineering, and they found it hard to get one for the panel. And so I was there among a number of lecturers who were representing the main disciplines of engineering. One of the things I learned from that, I was on last and I was watching the audience, and I discovered just from their body language that there was something troubling a lot of them in the audience. And when I got up to speak, I asked firstly then, well, who was doing higher level maths? And about a third of the audience weren't. And they had been completely overlooked then, and they were essentially finding out that they were at the wrong event, and the career wasn't for them. Luckily, I was aware of the other routes into the profession, and that I was at the time in UCD, which would have an honours maths entry, but I knew that there was technician, so certificate and diploma entry, and I knew that there was other routes as well through the Engineering Council exam, so I was able to add that. But it taught me that you really need to understand the audience and know a lot more about the wider profession than your own little niche. When I moved down to Waterford, I resolved not to get sucked into the southeast region, and it wasn't long though before I was brought into a careers talk in 1996, and that kind of started my activity with the region. And at that stage, I must say, the southeast region were running things much better, and they had local engineers who were working in industry and business and in the region, and it worked so much better. In 1997, with my colleague Sheila Donegan, we set up the Southeast Schools Science Initiative, because in 96, 97, I started bringing in school groups into WIT to try and get them interested in engineering. I'm very much looking at 5th and 6th years. Sheila was also doing something similar with chemistry. And I had been looking at the figures, so the numbers doing physics and chemistry were decreasing, and we were competing with those numbers. So I thought it would be better if we cooperated and try to increase the overall pool, because everyone was fishing in an ever decreasing pool. So we saw the advantage of merging science and engineering promotion, and in particular for engineering, that we needed to have access to science teachers and get them to bring their pupils to events. So we realized that, and in those days we talked about SET, S-E-T, science, engineering, technology. We were at that for a good number of years, and then WIT established a centre for us called CalMAS, and that was in 2002. And since then, things have evolved, and we've really grown over the years. In 2006, we set up a Waterford Engineering Week, and then when Engineers Ireland set up Engineers Week the following year, we stepped in with that, and we also established Maths Week. So we were promoting science, engineering, and technology, but we realized that maths was the weakest link, and that it was a limiting factor for everything. So Maths Week has grown really big over the years, with over 400,000 reached pre-COVID. Engineering Week hasn't taken off to the same rate, but we think it can take off a lot more, and I can talk about that later on. So that was my journey, I suppose, from promoting engineering to promoting STEM. So what we're trying to do essentially is connecting STEM, college and career in the region. So the schools tell them that there's a college in the region, it's Waterford Institute of Technology or Institute of Technology Carlow, and we link them to companies. There's companies in the region that want to employ you. So that's our general approach at the moment. So we need to think about what is STEM and what is engineering. So STEM, it can be answered simply, it's science, technology, engineering and maths, but actually what does that mean? Now, the acronym has been around since the 90s. It's come from America. As I said before, it was SET, people talked about. And there's reason for bunching those together. But as I say, it came from STEM. You'll hear people talk about STEAM. You put an art in there and it's STEAM. Medicine at the end, it becomes STEM. And stream with robotics, and you could, I suppose, have robotics and medicine, and you could make very, very long words. But STEM includes everything that we want, I think. You can argue. And there is a lot of creativity in STEM. We don't have to bring in art, but it's nice to do projects that involve art from time to time. The maths in STEM is important, as I said. Maths underpins science, technology, and engineering. So if we're not looking after maths, we're on a loser from the start. Now, engineering, the E in STEM. So the difference, I suppose, maths underpins all of STEM, but STEM underpins all of engineering. The science, technology, and maths underpins engineering. They're key tools we have to do engineering. So it makes sense that people in schools are becoming proficient in science, technology, and maths in order to become engineers. But it should be realized that STEM is not engineering, and engineering is not STEM. So what is engineering? We all have something in mind ourselves, but when you have to go and talk to different ages and the public, it can be quite difficult to be concise and explain it clearly. There are definitions floating around: using natural resources such as materials and energy to design and make products or processes for the benefit of society. There are some much more long-winded and jargonistic definitions. But what are the key things we need to get across? We need to be able to explain what it is if we're to promote it. But also, you will find maths and science mentioned in a lot of definitions. Engineering isn't maths and engineering isn't science. Engineers use maths and science to design and to build and make things. But there's also important other skills. We're selling ourselves short if we're saying we're science, technology, and maths. A lot of engineering is actually based on experience. It's empirical. It's built up not only in the engineer's lifetime, but in the history of the profession to that date. So a lot of what we do is actually not coming from science or maths. It's coming from experience, what worked in the past. Design is a critical skill. We need to be innovative, and very important to get across, engineering is all about communication. We can't build anything or make anything or design anything unless we can communicate clearly. Now, we may have not a great reputation in communicating with the public, and that needs to be addressed, but communication is a vital part of engineering. So what is the demand and supply situation for engineering? Well, as most people will know, there's a shortage of engineers at the moment. So in the recent barometer of the profession by Engineers Ireland, almost all engineering employers are concerned about a shortage of experienced engineers. Now, of course, experienced engineers come from engineering graduates, so there's obviously a direct link. So we need to increase the supply of engineering graduates. Sure, we can import engineers, and we have done, and we will continue to do so, and there's a lot of advantages from that, including the benefit of different ways of looking at problems. But we need to grow our own. Very important that we have a sustainable pipeline in the country and in this region. So as I said, engineers use maths and science. It isn't maths and science, but we need to ensure that people know that they're in for a good bit of maths and science if they do an engineering course in college. Now, STEM at primary school. This is a workshop we did recently. I think it was with Spree. And so here's a STEM activity for primary school. But note, this is not engineering. This is a chemistry event, and there's little enough engineering in terms of design or any of the engineering core skills in it. But it is important to get young people interested in science. So this is good at that age. Here's some older primary students, and if that is that engineering or not? Well, in fact, that's a sample of dirty water in the middle, and those girls have made filters. They a project based on the UN sustainable goals, and they had to experiment with water filters. So they had to work on designing it and testing it. So that's engineering. So it's just important for us to know when we're doing engineering and when we're doing science or maths or IT or coding with pupils. It's all valuable, but we as engineers need to just be sure that we're also getting the engineering message across. So young people should be playing with design and building and experimenting. And as they get older, we should be focusing more and more in on what engineering is. Now, I should say that in primary school, there is a focus on STEM, although the subjects are maths and science. But primary teachers have more free rein, and there are parts of engineering brought into it and technology. So STEM exists at primary schools. At secondary schools, STEM only exists as a categorization or a bundling of certain subjects. There is no interaction between these subjects at secondary school unless pupils are doing more than one. So in secondary school, this is a Leave Insert snapshot in 2019, the last seated exam. And we can see at the top here, mathematics has the highest level. Virtually all pupils do mathematics, 56,000 there. And we have there's about 18,000 did higher level maths, and that has increased over the last number of years. English, about 2/3 are doing higher level. Irish, less than half. Now, here's biology. Look at the size of biology. About 35,000 pupils doing biology. Geography, I left these in just for comparison. We're down now to chemistry, the next STEM subject, less than 10,000. Construction studies, not far behind. Physics is much, much lower than we'd like it to be, because physics is a feeder for so many careers. So physics, very low. Agricultural science, design and communication graphics, and this is a useful preparation for engineering, and that is about 10% of pupils take that. About 10% of pupils take the engineering subject, which is not a broad introduction to engineering. It has developed out of metalwork, the old vocational subjects. Applied mathematics is about 2,000 people doing applied maths, and technology a little bit less. and then there's a few people doing physics and chemistry. So this shows us that the pool for STEM is low. This is the trend over the last number of years, from the last 7 years. And we can see there's a gradual improvement, but there's also been an increase in numbers doing the Leaving Cert. And we can see here, though, even though we have gains at physics, we've got bigger gains in biology. And in higher education, then, we can see this is from the Engineers Ireland report. Graduates from level 7 and 8 courses, so ordinary and honours degree courses, and we can see that overall there's been a drop in engineers from 2012 of 4,500 down to 3,800 in 2017, a drop of 15%. Very, very worrying. This can be understood really by looking at the civil and building section. It's halved in that time. Now, this is post-crash, but these students would have signed up in 2008 in these courses. So what you're seeing here in 2014 is the reduction because of the collapse of the construction industry, and that was a problem. And it also shows that we didn't convert those students into other areas of engineering, which was a failure of the profession to get two messages across. One, that it's the construction industry that it's affected. Manufacturing was still quite strong. And the second thing was that even though the construction industry was affected, the life cycle of a pupil, considering that, you're talking about what is it going to be like in 5 years' time, and we should have sold the idea of the recovery in 5 years' time. And that's water under the bridge. We need to look forward. Now, when we suggest to young people to do engineering, we have to steer them to higher education courses. We need to know the disciplines of engineering. Military and civil engineering were the original divides, I suppose. Civil engineers were involved in fortification of medieval cities, streets and water supply, various things that they're more or less involved in now, serving the civic population. Mechanical engineers grew up around the Industrial Revolution, and they really expanded and became a specialism there as engines and mechanical devices and machines became more complex. Then in the 19th century, as electrical appliances developed, a new type of engineer specialist came about, the electrical engineer, and the process engineer in the late 19th century, and then the electronic engineer in the latter half of the 20th century. And these are the 5 core disciplines of engineering, I suppose. We might, there's a lot of others claim to be on that list. We might, I suppose, be putting energy on that list in the future as a main discipline. Within those, there's a lot of other disciplines. Mechanical can be split down. Civil can be split down into many more. And there's also applied disciplines: aeronautical, agriculture and food, building services, environmental, biomedical. And these are quite interesting. They're niche. They can sound quite attractive to students. And also certain ones like agricultural, environmental and biomedical, both here and abroad, have been shown to attract more women. So they should be of special interest, maybe. But we've also got our levels 6, 7 and 8 in undergraduate, and 9 and 10 in postgraduate. And in the institution, we have chartered engineer, engineering technician and associate engineer. So all of a sudden we're adding multiple dimensions to a matrix here. And this is the result. This is the CAO listing for two years ago. This is also from Engineers Ireland. And I think there's 127 courses there. Some of them the same name, many, many different names. And you can imagine what that's like to a 16, 17, 18-year-old looking at it. And, you know, I have anecdotally a lot of people saying, well, I looked at that, I didn't know what to do, so I decided to do business instead. So this is a major concern about how we communicate what engineering is and how we go about guiding students to a suitable course. And we also must make sure when we're promoting engineering, our interest might be in promoting our own branch of engineering. What I'm arguing here today, not only you should promote all of engineering, but we should promote science, technology, and maths as well. So I'll get back to that point in a while. So I mentioned earlier about engineering and maths. We must let pupils know that they are in for quite a lot of maths in college. The profession, I always say, engineers don't use a lot of maths, but they use maths a lot. But in college, there is a fair amount of maths that has to be negotiated, and that that will vary between level 6, 7, and 8, of course, and that that they should go into it understanding that. Now, there are core engineering skills that we need to highlight as well. Apart from talking about maths and science, we need to talk about sorry, jumped ahead. Experience, judgment, teamwork, and communications are all part of the everyday work of the engineer, as is ethics and sustainability. Everything we do now, from now on, and for some time, has involved environmental and sustainability considerations, and that's all going to become more and more important. And we have to align ourselves with sustainability. We have to be in telling people that to save the planet, the solutions are largely going to come from engineering, and apart from behavioral modification, but the solutions will come from engineers, and we must align ourselves with that and be associated with that. And we must also emphasize that we operate under an ethics obligation as well. So how do we go about promoting it? What do we do to promote it? One thing, I suppose, speaking of our ethics and sustainability and aligning ourselves with good stories, we need to be relevant. And the big story for the last almost 12 months has been COVID. What are we doing about COVID? Well, engineers are doing a lot about COVID, but we're not associating ourselves with the solutions. The public have in their mind the great work being done, frontline doctors and nurses in particular. They know about the scientists, and I fear this year that we're going to see from the CAO, we're going to see a big swing towards these subjects, but engineering being left behind. So we recently ran a program for 39 transition year students, engineering and science entrepreneur camp for 39 students online 2 weeks ago. And we asked them at the start, did they think engineering and design played a role in the fight against COVID? 65% did. After the camp, we asked them, and it was up at 95%, because we went through the idea of designing masks, the engineering design process. So they understood that everything that's used in the fight against COVID has an engineering design aspect to it. So this is something I think we need to push. And now that we're into vaccine rollout, it's engineers who are producing the vaccine. The scientists have done their work, the doctors have done their work in testing the vaccine, have done great work. Now it's engineers are the people who matter. Gender is a big issue. We could solve our problems overnight if we could attract the same amount of females as males to engineering, and that's something we've known for a long time, but it's easier said than done. And if we look at the higher level leaving cert choice. This is over 10-year period from 2019 and again 2009 and again 2019, and we can see that there's very little change. There's been very little move in 10 years, in 20 years, and even in 30 years, I would say, and that is very depressing. And we can see over on the left-hand side of this chart is all our STEM subjects, apart from biology, which is just here. What does that look in percentage females in the STEM-related subjects? Very, very low in most of them, apart from chemistry and biology. Biology is slightly dominated, is well dominated by females. Chemistry slightly dominated, and the others. Maths is approaching 50-50, and that is, I'm sure, is as a result of the 25 bonus points for higher level maths. So the other ones, very, very low. And what are the actual numbers? These are the actual numbers of females taking higher level subjects, and we can see it's down virtually nothing in engineering, technology, applied maths. Even design and communications, graphics and construction studies are low. They've shown a big increase, but they're from a very low point. So we've a lot of work to do, but it's not just, we're in a way swimming against the tide here, because there are huge societal and cultural currents in motion as well, and we have to figure out how we navigate that and try and influence young people and their parents. Now, one of the things that I think is really important, particularly for women, is the idea of an engineering identity or engineering confidence. And this is a photograph from the Engineer Your Future event run by some of my colleagues in Waterford IT. Mary and Susan from the committee are among the people who run this, and thanks for the photograph. But to give people confidence is really important. So that activities you can have that are project-based, or that they're working as an engineer, can build their confidence. Rather than telling them, oh, you get this number of points, you can be an engineer, you need to show them that, hey, you're working as an engineer, you could do this. So this is an excellent one, because it brought into the building workshop, and they actually got down and dirty with the block lane, and that sort of work gains confidence. And even though this isn't engineering per se, there's engineering elements to it, it is block lane or brick lane, but that builds confidence about, you know, seeing yourself on a building site, seeing yourself in the construction industry. And this picture speaks loads about confidence, if it doesn't speak that much about block lane. Now, on our switching to our entrepreneur course, we asked our students their confidence with engineering at the start. This green at the top is very confident, moderately, not sure, and then not confident, and very not confident. After the course, after 5 days of working as an engineer, we can see it's up hugely, and we consider that a great result for that. We can work with schools, but we can work with other groups, and Engineers Ireland have been very innovative in this, in partnering with Girl Guides to produce an engineering badge. This is an event we did with the Girl Guides in Wexford a couple of years ago, and it was structural engineering design. And again, it's working as an engineer, being an engineer, building that confidence. The considerations you need to have when you're going to do some intervention is, number one, to understand why you're doing it. What do you want out of it? And what do you hope to achieve in terms of your audience? Now, what can you achieve? I would think that you can run a session where everyone has a positive experience, and that's a result. They have a positive experience, it's related to STEM or engineering, and that gets stored in their mind as a positive experience of our profession. we could help build a positive attitude towards engineering. And this is going to be useful whether they become engineers or not. If the public has a positive attitude towards engineering, life as engineers would be a lot easier. And also, as the profile and status of engineering grows, because more people respect it, the more people will be attracted into the field. They should have awareness of opportunities. As I said at the start, you were linking schools, the institutes of technology shortly to become the Technological University of the Southeast, and the industries, all the industries in the region. So awareness of opportunities, and then the top of the pyramid is to have people choosing engineering as a career. We have to be realistic. You're not going to walk into a class of 60 years and tell them all about engineering, and after half an hour they're all going to become engineers. It's you know, if we can reach enough people and we make a change, you know, influence one person in a class here and there, and if we influence many to think positively about engineering and other STEM courses, well then we're doing very useful work. We need to think about the motivation of students choosing courses. Do they want to make money? Do they want to make a mark? Or do they want to make a difference? And there's nothing wrong with making all three. So we have to make sure it's not one size fits all. If we change our message to suit one part of the class, we could be turning off others. So we need to show that that there are a variety of positives from doing engineering. There's a lot of different professions where you can make money. There's a lot where you can make a mark, and a lot where you can make a difference. But I don't think there's many that can make such a mark and such a difference as in engineering. And the idea of making a mark, to be able to see what you've done, whether it's at the end of a day or at the end of a year, at the end of a project, to see what you've done, there is no real equal to engineering. I think the people who've been involved in the design and the construction of the Barrow Crossing, you know, they will be looking at that with pride for the rest of their lives. And, you know, that there's few other professions that give you that. And just on the money, if you're interested, this is the Engineers Ireland report. I think these are figures from 2019. Starting salaries typically low 30,000s. That's the median. Obviously, there's some higher and some lower, and rising to about 90,000 after 30 years. Again, the median. We need to emphasize, though, that if people want to make a lot of money, there's nothing about engineering will stop you doing that. There are many, many engineers who you have to take, if you want to make big money, you have to take entrepreneurial risk. And there are many engineers who've done that and make a lot of money. And, you know, so we should emphasize that, but probably not oversell it. Engineering has one of the highest starting salaries for graduates. So that's a good selling point. There's no point in talking about 30 years time, because no school kid thinks about that far into the future. These are the sort of things we can do. We can have presentations, which are lectures, panel presentations or discussions, demonstration lectures or shows. These are the sort of things we would do in CalMast. We'd also run workshops, fairs and festivals, and there's projects. And these are things that members of the region, members of the profession or the engineering industries can get involved in. Presentations can be big or small. It takes a certain skill set to talk to 1,000 people all at once, but you can start small. You could start at one of our many outdoor activities or festival activities. This is Spree Festival. This is SciFest. Now, SciFest runs in Carlow and in Waterford, and there is probably good opportunities for engineers to become involved in the judging. We would use about 40 judges in our Waterford version. Workshops are probably a good way to start. So engineering, I feel, as much as possible, should involve doing things, and workshops are an easy way to start. And if you work in a team or you work with somebody who's done it already, you pick it up very fast. It's kind of low risk. I think there's 3 ingredients: know your audience, know your subject, and finally know yourself. You need to know your own limitations, what you're comfortable with. Not everyone can be like Brian Cox and talk to 10,000 people in the point. Know what your limitations are, know what your particular style is, and work to that. Obviously, know your subject. Prepare well, particularly if you're doing careers talks, to know the lay of the land there, and know your audience, because it's a hell of a difference going into 5-year-olds as 15-year-olds. So primary schools, we tend to aim for the older pupils ourselves. Secondary schools, the big opportunities is in transition years. 5th and 6th year this year have had so much disruption, they're unlikely to be interested in anything else this year. In communicating engineering, it's complex, a lot of unfamiliar terms. We must ensure that we start at the level that the learner understands. And this is a mistake I made hugely. My very first school's talk was actually a first aid talk when I was, I think, 17. I went into a primary school, and I completely overestimated what I knew at that age. And we were inclined to think that we knew a lot more. So start low and be able to come up rather than start high and lose people. Relate things to real life, and that's easier for engineering than most other areas. Use analogies, use demonstrations, use props if you can. Things you could be involved in: Engineering Your Future runs in April, May in Carlow and Waterford, and that's run and around the country, run by Clyde Road, and it's an excellent program, a full week for transition years. Great opportunity to help students who are already interested in engineering find their right path. Now, Engineers Week itself, I think this slide is probably in the wrong order. There is guidance on the Engineers Ireland website for Engineers Week, how to get involved. There's lots of different help there for you if you want to do something locally. We are severely constrained this year, though, with the COVID crisis, because we can't. For Maths Week and Science Week, we were able to beam into the classroom and talk to all the children together, or the pupils together, and but this time they're in the home, so it's much more difficult, and it reduces the opportunities, I think, for involvement. But even if you're deterred from being involved this year, there's other things we can do later in the year, and also there's always next year. There's loads on the STEPS website. Go to the new Engineers Ireland website and go to the schools button on it, and you'll find it there. Everything has changed around a bit. So I'm going to just finish up talking about the Southeast Engineers Week. And that is this year going to be a joint exercise between Carlow Institute of Technology Carlow and Waterford Institute of Technology. We are merging, we're in the process of merging, and we hope to be designated the Technological University of the Southeast by this time next year. So in preparation for that, we're already starting to work together. It makes a lot of sense to cooperate instead of compete. We hope there's going to be a lot of synergies in that. Now, also, we would see that the ideal partnership is ourselves on the education, Engineers Ireland as the profession, and Engineering the Southeast as the industry body. So we would hope that moving forward, when we're building this cooperation, that we will be able to pull everyone together. Something I meant to say earlier, and I forgot to say it, and it's really important that in addition to promoting the various technician, associate engineer, and chartered engineering levels, we mustn't forget about apprenticeships, because both apprenticeships for professional engineering that are starting and likely to expand, but crafts, we mustn't forget the trades area, because it's no use in us producing all the engineers the economy wants and we have no tradespeople on site or in the factories. So we must also use the opportunity to promote those as well, because if you're in a mixed group, there'll be somebody there who won't want to go the academic route, so you have something for them as well. So what are we actually going to do for Engineers Week? As I say, we're severely constrained. We're hoping to get 2,000 kits, little maker kits, into homes, and we're looking to distribute these through schools. Now, our priority is going to be to disadvantaged schools, to special schools, and to a number of direct provision centres. If we have kits over, we will distribute them further to mainstream schools. We'll also have online careers talks and presentations online that schools or pupils in their home should be encouraged to participate in by teachers. So ourselves and our colleagues in Institute Technology Carlow, led by Shane Murray, also committee member, are working on this at the moment. Our plans have been had to be changed when the schools closed. We know the special schools will be back in, so we're hoping we'll be able to do a lot with them. And that's part of, you know, regardless of whether somebody will ever become an engineer, we would like that everyone can share in knowing what engineering is about, and in some way be part of the engineering community. And you know, after all, everyone is a beneficiary of engineering in our society. So everyone not only deserves to know how it's done, but also should have an input, in a democratic input into how engineering is run, and how engineers prioritize and tackle issues in society. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope you got something out of it. This needn't be, you know, this wasn't ever intended to be a course in how to promote engineering. This was meant to show you the reasons why we should do it and the possibilities. And I suppose it's a mustering cry for engineers and people in the engineering industry in the region to come on board and to help us bring engineering into every town and village in the region and in every school. So people can follow up with me. I'll give my details in a minute, but if anyone has any questions on it, I'd be very happy to hear them now.
Yeah, well, thanks a million, Eoin. That's got a very thought-provoking presentation, and it shows how important it is for all of us just to really get involved, you know. And just a few of the key things that I took away, that's just the shortage of experienced engineers. And like when you see engineering numbers like 4,500 into 3,800, building and civil reducing by 55%, yeah, you know, it's an incredible drop. And I suppose you look at, again, you were saying about the CAO options for students, like when they see such a massive page and how confusing that is, you know. So it's in some way to simplify that.
Yeah, and we must remember as well, Colm, that the Department of Education and indeed schools themselves, they would they don't see it as their role to promote engineering necessarily. The Department of Education would see the importance of STEM and engineering, but there is a culture of parity of esteem among all subjects, and if you try to prioritize one subject over others, you'll have a whale of opposition. But you know, things like numbers into engineering should set off alarm bells and should be addressed at the very highest level nationally. We shouldn't be waiting till we see drops in graduation. And I think, you know, we need to cut ourselves, we need to say, yes, we respect all other subjects, and other subjects all have their merit and their importance, but this is critical and needs to be treated somewhat differently.
Yeah, definitely. And I can even see it on sites around the country, like the shortage of skilled labor. And there's like, there is a shortage of engineers at the minute, you know, so that's definitely coming true. Yeah, and I'd say it's so important for us all to get involved. And another keynote that I just picked from what you said is that if you're getting involved, to start low. And I'd say definitely a good start to be with primary rather than being torn apart by a couple of 115-year-olds. You know, so.
Well, you know, I think definitely start somewhere safe and comfortable. It's like, you know, they say when you buy a new garment, iron part of it that's not going to be seen first. So, but also start with your colleagues. Start with your colleagues. Test it. Team up with us, our colleagues in Carlow, or people who, and you know, come. It's the easiest way of all is come to a workshop and help out in a workshop and get trained up that way. And of course, remember Clyde Road, steps in Clyde Road have a lot of advice as well. But I think we really need, as a region, to be addressing the regional needs and working, cooperating at a local level with our local knowledge. So do you want me to go through these questions, or can you read them out to me, or will I open them?
No, you go through them. You can open them.
Yeah. Sorry, I've opened them. From Karen Deverley, is there a value to having something in Ireland on RTE like Disney and Shop Class, where there's a program on TRTE? To be honest, I don't know. It sounds like the answer is yes, but I'm not really sure. I presume it's a STEM related show. I do think that RTE did good work in putting the school hub together very quickly, but we would have to ask ourselves, is our national broadcaster, could their national broadcaster be leveraged better than to have 2 hours a day of school when the whole nation is at home in school? We really, I think, and I think there is big questions about the culture in RTE regarding engineering and science, and that plays through. Anyone who has watched the coverage would probably sense that. I think, yes, it's not just enough for us to be going into schools. We have to use our considerable influence in trying to push, particularly RTE as the national broadcaster, to support STEM much better. I think Cleena Breslin, I feel women's promoting engineering is the best way to gain the interest of other women. Are there programs or events that focus on gaining female interest? If so, can other female engineering students, lecturers, leaders get involved? The answer, Cleena, is yes. For Engineers Week, we are currently organising a careers event that purely for or exclusively for girls, but we're also going to have a separate one, a general one as well. But we will have one with young female graduates, and it will be emceed by a female engineer, Niamh Shaw. So yeah, and I'm sure my colleagues in Waterford, Susan and Mary and others, they are female colleagues, do a lot of work promoting engineering, and they're called upon a lot. I'm sure it's the same in Carlow, and I know that a lot of women in the profession are very generous with their time, and a lot of time is often demanded of them. But I think that it's important. It's also important for boys to see women in the profession. It's important for boys when they are going to when we're presenting engineering to them, that they see women in the profession as well. Has there been any rebound in civil admissions in recent years? Yes, I think it's coming up, but we'll really this year there's, well, I suppose college rates we can see them, but I'm not entirely sure. I think there has been. I don't know what it is across the country, but I think it has started to creep up. But we really need to guard against these shocks in the future. And this comes back to working with the parents and educating parents. The CAO system does untold damage, and the young people following the points, you know, is terrible. Engineering points went down drastically in the 90s because engineering places expanded hugely, and it's a supply and demand thing. And then you get, you know, students try to follow the prestige courses, and they associate high points with high salaries and various things. And you know, that's not something that just engineering can tackle. That's a wider issue, and it really is causing. It has caused, I think, most of the problems in our education system can be traced to the point system. Issues about the leave insert, you know, how the leave insert is run. The leave insert has just become a selection process for third level, and we need to. I think we need to educate parents strongly about you're not choosing a career for next year. It's 5 years time, and you'll be in that career for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And you have to think, and we have to, I suppose, also show that engineering is future proofed against the automation and the AI and machine learning that's coming down the tracks. And that so I just think we need to guard against these shocks, and we need it needs to be a concerted effort at the time rather than playing catch up. John Byrne, excellent presentation. Oh, I had to read that part out. In your experience in WIT, has the gender balance of students changed over the last 25 years or so? I'd have to say, John, that probably it's very depressing that over the last 40 years, we should look from 1970 to 1980, female participation in engineering went from around 0% or 1% up to around 15 to 20%, and has stayed at that for the last 30 years, 40 years, 30 to 40, 15 to 20%. You know, it's not. I don't think we can turn it about on our own. I think there's bigger issues in society. One thing I might say though is that I was quite shocked by the result from the engineering, was it the barometer or one of the reports, that a majority of female engineers felt that their progress was hampered by their gender. And I thought that was shocking and needs to be investigated much more. But one of the things I do think that we beat ourselves up about gender equality in engineering, and the media picks up on this a lot. I wonder, are we much different to law or medicine or other professions, accountancy? They have a lot more female. There's certainly over 50% of females on those courses in college. But I wonder, are there similar issues? And I wonder, are we highlighting negative issues and associating negative experiences with STEM? I don't know the answer to that, but I think it should be investigated. Okay, some of these are comments. Do we need a STEM approach for parents as well? And that's from Pat Roach. And yes, we do. Issues like the COVID pandemic when you read the discourse on social media, and it's probably advisable not to, people who are obviously educated don't know the basics, don't understand the basics, but still are pushing for lifting of restrictions, pushing for this, that, and the other. I think that we need to look at that. We are looking, Pat, about the possibility of an evening event for the public during Engineers Week. We're just trying to see about getting the right speaker for that. Okay,
we
so
might give you one or two more questions, Owen, just I'm conscious of time.
Okay, Anne-Marie Clark says, this should be shared. A new kids TV show will be aired on TG Car in September, which will focus on kids engaging in engineering topics. That's show will be touring the country. Well, that's great. And Clyde Road is involved in that. Okay, there's several more there. Thank you everyone for asking questions. If you want to email me with any more questions, if you want to get in touch, I should probably share my screen again, and I'm making a mess of that. So
yeah, and what we will do is
Colm can pass on my contact details, and I'm happy to talk to anyone. And if anyone wants to get involved in working in collaboration and drawing together all the resources of the region to help out in this, I'd be delighted to hear from you. So thanks, Colm.